Good evening. I'd like to call to order the City of Fairview Board of Commissioners meeting, May 16, 2013, at 7 p.m. Those who would, please join us for the pledge and the prayer.
Please bow. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that you created for us. Father, we thank you for the many blessings of life. Father, we want to ask that you would guide these men and women as they make the decisions of this city. Father, that their decisions would be in the best interest of the citizens. Father, we ask these things in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Next item is the approval of the agenda.
Second.
I would like to add under, and Mr. Cantrell, you may direct me, but add under the plan of services under 8B and C for the proposed of acknowledgement of filing and reference to the Planning Commission for recommendation on both annexations. Don't know if I'm supposed to read all of that, but is there anything else we need to add to 8B and C, Mr. Cantrell?
No, ma'am, that would be under new business.
Okay, and I would like to also make a change under 8C, deleting the 7124 Elrod Road that was posted and have that corrected to 2931 Fairview Boulevard. Would there be any other changes, additions, or deletions to the agenda?
I'd like to add to also the discussion and or approval or action on going and getting information out about the beer, non-beer at the July Festival. And I was asked that question for advertising reasons, so they can go ahead and get started on the advertising.
That would be 8D, discuss and or take action on alcoholic beverage at the 4th of July celebration at City Hall. Any other additions or deletions? What are the wishes of the board for approval? We already have the first and second, sorry. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item number 3 is citizens' comments. We have Mr. Neil Rice. Would you please approach the podium? Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. A few weeks ago, I was requested to obtain from the Tennessee Historical Commission a letter of assurance that adding the heating and air conditioning system as well as the kitchenette and restroom would not affect the status of the structure on the Historical National Register. We received a letter, and it was presented to each of you, but it was somewhat problematic because the assurance that was provided stated that making those changes should not affect the listing. Specifically, there was concern about a couple structural items. One, would the ceiling be lowered? They did not want that to happen. And secondly, would windows be changed in any way? They did not want that happen. I wrote another letter to them after several telephone conversations and requested further assurance. This week I placed in your mailboxes here at City Hall copies of 2 letters that I recently received from the Tennessee Historical Commission. I don't know if you have received and reviewed those letters or not, but the first letter provides absolute assurance that adding the heating and air conditioning system will not change the status. The second letter, the letter also requested a copy of an architect's drawing of the kitchenette and restroom. That was provided, and the second letter, approved the architect's drawing of the restroom and kitchenette, and also provided an assurance that construction in that manner, as illustrated, will not change the status on the National Register as long as the kitchenette and restroom are compatible but not imitative of historic materials. In other words, they should not be constructed in a way to indicate that this was original. Thirdly, the second letter indicated that to the greatest extent possible, the original windows must be restored. This is something we've known from the beginning. Consequently, as you discuss city projects this evening, please allow me to request that you grant approval for the architect to continue with whatever work he is doing, the submission of bids, and approving the donated heating and air conditioning system to be installed. I'm unaware now of any problems whatsoever with regard to the question of will those changes affect the national listing, and it will not. So I do hope that you will, during your discussion of the projects this evening, grant approval once again for the architect to do whatever it is he's doing, I'm not certain, the submitting of bids, and allowing Mr. Robert Clark to go ahead and install the donated system. Do you have questions?
Thank you for your comments.
All right.
Mr. Jim Power, would you approach the podium? Good evening.
I'm sure most of y'all know why I'm here. It's about the chickens. I would like to have hens in Fairview. And I say this, and tomorrow morning, I will be on Richland Street in Nashville, Tennessee, right behind the Jewish synagogue, building a $1,000 chicken coop for some people. They can have chickens in a house that's worth over $1 million in downtown Nashville. When I build these chicken coops in Nashville, they are taken aback that I can't even have chickens myself in Fairview. I understand that from talking to other people that when this was passed, that properties had went down quarter acres and all different kinds of things, and it was passed because those properties were smaller and may not be able to have chickens. Chickens aren't raised like they were used to. I kept 4 chickens, 32 square feet. I moved them every day in my front yard. None of my neighbors even knew I had them because hens are quiet. My dog makes considerably more noise than the chickens, and I think the city manager walks by and he barks at him from time to time, so he can attest to that. And the chickens are just, they're quiet animals. The thing, just like any other pet or animal you'd have, I think this, whatever citizens have it should be required to take care of it. I have to keep my dog up. I have to make sure he has a place to stay that's dry and that kind of thing. I don't believe in chickens running loose. I don't believe that willy-nilly chicken raising is what should happen. And like Nashville, the plan that you talked about last week, and I think Commissioner Carroll talked about, I'd like to see something like that passed, and I think that's going to be discussed tonight. I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment, sir. The next item is awards and recognition. And this evening, I have the distinct honor of swearing in one of the new police officers for the city of Fairview.
Officer Richard Ross. I will include everything sworn in.
Okay.
Sorry, make sure you're loud so we can hear it.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. You repeat after me, please. I state your name, solemnly swear.
I, Richard Ross, solemnly swear
I will never betray my badge or the public trust.
I will never betray my badge or public trust.
I will always have the courage to protect and serve all citizens
I will always have the courage to protect all citizens
without prejudice or malice,
without prejudice or malice,
to hold myself to a higher standard
to hold myself to a higher standard,
and be accountable for my actions.
and to be accountable for my actions.
I will uphold all federal, state, and local laws
I will uphold all federal and state local laws
and serve the city of Fairview
and serve the city of Fairview
and the Fairview Police Department
and the Fairview Police Department
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank
Welcome to the city of Fairview.
In a week from Sunday, he goes to the
Thank you so
Law
much.
Enforcement Training Academy, 10 weeks.
Okay. Thank you, Chief Harris. I appreciate that.
Congratulations.
Will there be any other awards or recognitions from the board or staff?
There are no staff awards or recognitions tonight, Mayor.
Okay. And in public announcements, item 5 on the agenda, I would like to make a comment for the Keep Williamson Beautiful, and the Fairview Area Chamber of Commerce is hosting our spring clean sweep. It was postponed due to weather, but it will be this Saturday, the 18th, 8 a.m. at the Bank of America parking lot. They will have everything that's needed. Just show up and be ready to show your pride for Fairview. We'll be picking up along some identified roadways, and it does start at 8 o'clock and ends between 11 and 12. So if you or your family or your civic organization, church, want to be a part, please show up. We'll find something for you to do. Uh-huh.
Kevin had a list of people, since the city's doing such a good job on the main thoroughfare, that you may give it to you or to us, and let us take a look at
Okay.
some more silos that we
Okay.
Just real quick, my crew does a real good job of picking up the major thoroughfares in the city of Fairview, and I'd like to recommend to the board and the people of Fairview some of the side roads, the arterial roads that hit 196, like Cox Pike or Cumberland or Crow Cut. We were out bush hogging Cumberland and Chester this morning, so we should be pretty good to get up and down those roads and get trash picked up. So that's I know everybody wants to be seen and all the high school kids want to wave and everything, but if we get some of those arterial streets, it'd be a real big help to the city.
Okay, that'll be the focus. I appreciate that input. Any other?
Mayor, just want to remind everybody of the emissions testing on Tuesdays at the Highway 96 Fire Station from 7:30 till noon.
Thank you. I would like to, in way of public announcements, I would like to also let the public know that there is a community garden as part of the Park Commission and the Community Garden Committee, the committee, and we have met twice. There are some exciting discussion and projects coming. If you have any interest, whether you are a master gardener, a citizen with interest, or anyone who has had experience in the past, I would ask that maybe you speak with myself or Commissioner Carroll before the end and just get an input so you can get in the email list in the loop and be a part of that community garden committee. Any other comments? The next item is the approval of the minutes of April 18th, 2013 Board of Commission meeting. What are the wishes of the board?
Second.
First, second, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The next item is 7A, O Business. Discuss and or take action on Bill number 2013-12.
Bill number 2013-12, ordinance number 807 is an ordinance to add Chapter 3, Section 13-301, Keeping of Chickens, to Title 14, Zoning and Land Use of the Municipal Code of the City of Fairview, Tennessee. Move for approval with some discussion and changes.
Second.
Discussion.
First off, the caption there, there's a typo, Larry. Title. It says tile, but I know that's supposed to be Title 14. We need to get that corrected. I guess first question will go to Mr. Don Lavorne. And I'm not saying you had anything to do with this, but number 3 says AR5 zones and AR15 zones, which are agriculture zonings, correct?
Yes, sir.
Under agriculture zonings, couldn't they already have chickens?
Not agricultural residential. AR means agriculture residential.
Agriculture residential?
Yes, sir.
But they could have horses?
You can have horses, yes.
Okay. Based on the way it's written right now, forgive me for this, what was the gentleman's name right there?
Mr.
Powers.
Mr. Powers, what is your current zoning for your property? Do you know? If you don't know, that's okay, but,
It's just a residential property.
so this would not allow him to have his chickens. So this is gonna have to be rewritten, and what I really think ought to happen is no one in the entire city should be excluded from this. Now, if they live in a subdivision and the subdivision says they can't have it, that's out of our power.
Correct.
But we, in doing this, should say every resident has the equal right to have this if they want it. But if the subdivision says they can't have it, then they've got to take that up with them, not the city. So,
The only footnote I would say is multiple family or something would not, even if they didn't have restrictions,
Apartments.
they have no grounds
That's
necessarily. So I would say
correct.
that zoning would not be
This is for
part of your conversation.
any single family dwelling zoning that we have. And I don't know if we need to list all of those, or if we just need to write it as single-family dwellings.
No, I would suggest that those zones were suggested to me by Mr. LaVorn. But I think if you're going to do others, then the specific zones should be listed. That way there's no confusion. Because, no reflection, no reason to. 90% of the people probably may be aware of the zone they live in, but somebody moves in. They're basically the same in most places, but that way you don't have any confusion over the nomenclature. And if somebody has a problem, then when they call, says, "Can I have chickens?" They say, "Well, what zone what zone regulation are you in?" And the staff has that map, and they can say, "Well, you're in an AR-15 or an AR-5 or an R-40 or whatever that you're in."
Well, what I would say to that is then, instead of us scurrying to write all these in tonight and missing one, I will just make another motion to defer this, bring it back to the next meeting with all that in order. And if anybody wants to add anything to that at this time, it's perfectly fine if they want to.
I can get with Don. It's easy to do. You can do it one of two ways. You can approve it on first reading. It's fully amendable to the second reading, provided it doesn't change the content of the ordinance. But that probably is enough to change the content. So we probably do need to defer it to the next meeting. I'll get with Mr. LaVorn and get the residential, the ones that are included. And if you're not listed in that group, then you can't, which would, the multifamily would not be included in that.
Second your motion.
Or condominiums.
Well, and the only thing I would have concerns with is actually these subdivisions. Some of the older subdivision with the smaller lot lines, they probably don't have neighborhood regulations. And I worry about making a blanket, like even Nashville and the others had lot sizes, that way you're not having some area that, was a cramped on a condo, even though.
Most of your zoning designations are going to have the lot size with it. If it's,
Right.
it has an R5 is, an R5 is 5,000 square feet.
Other than multiple, the least size is a quarter acre.
No, ma'am.
Correct me.
Lease size is a 5,000 square foot lot.
And then
The older the
acreage, what's
subdivision,
that?
the larger the lots. Because
What's
they don't
that?
have-
An eighth of an acre.
Where's that at?
It's, the RS5 is only designated for town center.
We don't have any of them
Outside.
currently, but that
That's
is
where I'm going. Where is that?
that is a zoning we have.
Okay.
We don't have any houses currently on that, but to speak to
I
what
knew it was
Commissioner Carroll said,
quarters, or you
the
know what I'm
older the subdivision, the larger
The
the
bigger the
lots.
lot. Mhm.
Because we didn't have small lots back then, so
The second.
you're gonna have more land in those subdivisions.
And you would leave out the classification for the city center. It just wouldn't be
Correct.
listed. We would also need to revise it to, the University of Tennessee's study recommended 2 square feet per chicken inside and 6 square feet in the run outside. So we'll have to go back and change that limit on those because there were larger lots, and we limited it to like 40 chickens. Well, obviously, we'll have to make that where that you can only have the number of chickens that would.
Based on the square footage.
Right.
Okay, that sounds,
We have a motion and a second. Other discussion on the amendment?
deferral.
The deferral. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that negates the first.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
You want to totally exclude town center from allowing chickens?
Yes.
I would think so.
Well, if it got to it, you could always, with another ordinance, come back and if you had some specific situation, you could always come back and
Put
amend
it
it.
in.
Yeah, because there are larger lots in town center, aren't there?
Well, most of your town center is going to be small lots.
But would there be R5 in Town Center to where we said yes, but Town Center said no?
Well, the town center carries an RS5, an RS8, a RM20, and RM12, which is
Multi.
multifamily.
Right.
So you got 10, 8, and 5, which is 10,000 square foot, 8,000 square foot, and 5,000 square foot.
The only reason I brought that up is if we approved R5 and said not Town Center, but Town Center had R5, we've got to look at that because that's,
Well, right now, RS5 is
It's
only
only in the town
allowed
center.
in town
It's, the
center.
only place it can go is here.
RS8 and
so it
up,
wouldn't be in our,
RS8 and up can go outside of town
No.
center.
okay. Okay, thanks for that.
And there is a provision that I would like to leave in there that does what Commissioner Johnson said, that it makes it very clear that this is for the city enforcement, that it does not in any way infringe and should never be interpreted to infringe upon covenant restrictions or homeowners association agreements.
Right. Okay, moving on. Item number 7B, discuss and/or take action on recommendations from the Park Commission. This May 6th meeting from the Park Commission, there was a recommendation, and the recommendation was that the Board of Commissioners approve a optional ADA trail in Bowie Park outside of what staff is currently working with for going from the parking lot across the dam and down the lower side of Loblolly in your figurings and thoughts for our ADA as a second option. A motion for approval.
Second.
Discussion?
Basically, all they're doing is wanting us to
Look at a
look
second
at a
option.
second option. So,
Versus only having one option, doing all the evaluation and saying, this is what we came up with, and it'd be the only thing. This is a second one that was identified because the park board was given the task to look at this project, then informed that there was a cost basis going on a staff analogy, which is great. So at that point, I asked them, were they ready to present what they thought, at least for a second option, and it was asked for a recommendation. Other discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
We have 7C, discuss and/or take action on recommendations from budget workshop. We had a budget workshop at 6 p.m. and the staff and the Board of Commissioners discussed the draft of the 2013-2014 budget. And I believe we had very healthy discussion, and it was from a very conservative standpoint to the point of the matter was the Walmart revenue, of whether the budget would be balanced on the Walmart revenue or not, and if it was or was not, what was a good discussion for us to look at the big picture. So like I say, we had very good discussion, and I appreciate everybody's input. And I believe from the comments, the recommendation from the budget workshop is to charge the CFO, Ms. Pewitt, to revise the budget draft to show no Walmart money, and then to bring it back to us to analyze how we can balance the budget and not spend the money we do not have. That is a recommendation. I make a motion for approval.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. 7D, discuss and/or take action on Fairview City projects. Project manager, Holsinger. I was going to say Kevin. Good evening.
Good evening. It's probably going to be a medley between me and Mr. Lavorne on the list that I put before you. I'm taking over Mr. Hyatt's project list and working with Mr. Lavorne to bring you up to speed on the current projects. Right now, I've added one new column on the project list over in the right-hand side, something that I found it going to be easier for me and maybe for y'all. We've always kind of talked on what phase some of these projects are in, and I'm going to establish if it's a known phase, like a NEPA phase or a construction phase or a bid phase, we're able to put that phase in that. Some of the phases will have to identify will be something like on Lake Van, it's under like a feasibility study, what I'm currently doing, and a cost analysis. So I'll work with Don and City Manager Hyatt to establish the nomenclature for that phase. And we can keep that real simple. We'll start off with the first phase, the Greenway project. From what I understand, we're still not to the NEPA phase. I'm slowly getting plugged into that job, but City Manager Hyatt has talked to the people in charge, and we're still waiting, I believe, on a response. Any questions specifically on Greenway? On Bowie Lake Road project, we are currently waiting on the final inspection for the pad-mounted transformers. Once that's approved by Middle Tennessee Electric and the state inspector, we can get Middle Tennessee out to go from the pole-mounted transformers to the underground power service. That will free up the sidewalk work and the continuation of the project. I have one other utility, Comcast, to get into the fire station, and I'm meeting with them tomorrow, and hopefully that'll be resolved early next week, and we will keep going. Lake Van Trail, City Manager and I met this morning about Lake Van Trail. I've done a preliminary analysis on the asphalt walk and the boardwalks for the project. Right now, if we plug the number on the asphalt walk, which was based on a unit cost from the lowest bidder, we're looking at $115,000 just for the asphalt walks. Most of that's probably going to be done by a utility or a excavation contractor that has the means and the equipment to do that, to bring in the gravel and the 6 inches and the compaction and the asphalt. On the boardwalk, I believe with the staff labor force we have, we could probably complete those ourselves. The boardwalk 1 has a $26,460 value. Boardwalk 2 is $25,704 value, and Boardwalk 3 is $18,144. And that's just labor. That has no labor, that's materials only.
And what was your 1, 2, 3 distance?
Boardwalk 1 has a distance of 105 feet. Boardwalk 2 has a distance of 102 feet, and Boardwalk 3 has a distance of 72 feet.
Are they just different sections?
Yes, there's different
Okay.
sections of the trail. And what I've done is work with a local lumber supplier just to get some rough numbers on the material cost. And in my numbers also, I have the concrete cost. But in my boardwalk numbers, I do not have labor.
And with the boardwalk, there is no asphalt? You
Well,
have
there's
two
asphalt.
different-
No, so you have asphalt from the parking lot up to the dam. We're still working with the dam inspector and finding the regulations on what we can actually do, if we can put in culverts, concrete precast, and put asphalt across that or a boardwalk. But after it reaches the dam, it picks up, it's asphalt up to, I think it's about 393 feet, you hit a first boardwalk. The boardwalk meanders through some of the, I guess, more swampy area, watery area, then trail picks back up. Then there's a second boardwalk, trail picks back up, and then there's a third boardwalk, and the trail returns you near shelter 2.
Okay, so some of your bid going across the dam can be utilized in what the park board just requested as a second option?
Yeah, the
Okay.
dam bridge originally, it was a Contec. Contec is the manufacturer. They make a pre-engineered, pre-designed, prefabricated bridge that's constructed and set in, and it had a bid price of $73,500. I'm working on an alternative to how we can get across the dam without impacting the dam structure.
Okay, and what was the conversation, or will there be a conversation about the asphalt and the lake and the contaminants of the water?
Yes, part of that is in the specifications that were originally developed by the engineer. And since we've got the original bid package, we can reduce scope and we can actually send it out to bid, but maintain the environmental and quality requirements of the asphalt. And I have a good grasp on what the asphalt walk's going to cost. So with this new trail you're talking about, I can put some numbers onto that pretty quick. I'll just have to get a good measurement on that. So,
Okay.
any questions on?
Any comments or questions on
Lake
that?
Van?
I'm glad to see us moving forward.
Okay, continue.
Roadscapes. Right now, it's in the NEPA phase, according to Mr. Lavorne. We're just waiting on the environmental documents. Triangle School.
Triangle School, as Dr. Rice has presented to you, was the letters that he received from the state. I did finally get in contact with the National Historical Commission, and they said the only way that it would be removed from the National Registry is only through a recommendation through the state. So the state would have to implement that being removed from the National Registry. So with these letters, we feel comfortable that we can move forward. Hadn't gotten a cost back from the architect yet for the flat fee that we've requested. Once we get that back, we can report that back to you and let y'all decide whether or not y'all want to spend the money for the plans.
Okay.
How long has that request from the architect been out?
Well, it just went out today. We discussed it yesterday with the mayor and had discussed some different things in relation to where the electrical needed to come into the building. We had to make those decisions and get those to the architect so he could have his guys look at how to design the electrical component of it. And so we sent him an email today looking for him to probably respond back to us tomorrow with a flat rate so we can get it back to you all.
So will that be on next?
Yes, sir. We have contacted Tony Reasons in the historic overlay district to make the changes that were requested by Dr. Rice and the Historical Commission for the removing of the names of the buildings and just to make it a generic overlay. And where the amphitheater was, I told Tony to leave that building there, so in case they wanted to put it there, something there later, and just add another building to where they wanted to put the amphitheater, and reconfigure the sidewalk to allow for some open space between the amphitheater, so you'd have a place to sit out in front of the stage area. He come back and said that he would do that at no charge, so we should have that to go back to the Planning Commission at next month's meeting to amend that PUD. And so once Planning Commission makes a recommendation to amend the PUD, that will come back to this board for approval as well.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is Bowie Park Forestry. Discussions with City Manager Hyatt. The bid is being prepared and it should go out, I believe, next week.
And I just asked a question as I was walking this morning. Are the X's coming down or the X's are staying?
Actually, the X's have not come down because I've worked with Keith. The park department actually wants to utilize those trees as part of their resources for the craft projects.
But the ones with X's
Those
are coming down?
Yes, ma'am.
Those were identified to come down in the basal of that, okay.
Correct.
That is
Then I
correct.
won
That-
my bet with my husband. Thank you. Thank you.
The welcome signs, we have now completed the back of the welcome sign at the fire station on 96. We still need the location for the third welcome sign. I'm not sure if it could be possibly in the PUD amendment for the Triangle School and Historical Village. Commissioner Sutton has recommended a spot down 90 or 100 on the left-hand side past, I guess, the Givens family's property. If we can get approval from them, that's an option. We'll just have to look at the feasibility for electrical in the future for any kind of lighting.
Okay.
I talked with Mr. Young last night, the meeting we had, we were going to go with it. If the city chooses to put it out, let it fall right there. So it would just give them, everybody know the project location.
And I like the location. The only concern is the property's for sale.
I think he's going to be right away there.
I'll have to get out there.
It's the
and
corner of Southern Road and 100, right? That would be my only concern.
It's going to be in the rise.
Yeah.
From where the time comes up, which would look a lot better for us.
Okay.
She can get it, she don't have a problem.
Okay. Both the corner of Deer Ridge and 100, and then that particular one, if you can evaluate electricity and options and roadways and things That would be good for us to come to a decision on that and get past this.
I did receive a bid from a local electrician for lighting at the fire station, and it was roughly $2,100. That's turnkey, conduit, inspections, LED lights. I'm going to work with him on some of his numbers, but it's not, I mean, it's per NEC standard.
You
It's
said lighting at the fire station. What are you speaking about?
the welcome sign.
Lighting the new signs.
And 96?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
'Cause I have a
I was on
spare-
Bowie Lake Road going, what are we lighting up? Okay.
I have a spare in the panel there that I could
Okay.
light up, that one. 100, I'm going to get with him when we establish the other location.
We've got an access manhole right
Yeah.
there across.
The only thing probably a little bit more than that due to the footage, and we'll have to get an easement for Middle Tennessee Electric, and I think we should be able to get that.
Okay.
Have you discussed easement with the Beatas?
I have not. It's just something Commissioner Sutton brought up to me earlier this week.
They just need to get together.
Okay. A to-do on that one. Great.
Safe route to school is kind of in the same boat as the Greenway project, but I'm trying to get plugged in there and get more information and help push that through.
Actually, safe routes and active transportation are in NEPA.
Okay, they're in NEPA.
Yes.
Safe routes in NEPA. And MPO, the active transportation?
Yes, both of those are in the environmental phase.
Okay.
And then number 10,
Also,
MPO is in NEPA as well with Griggs and Maloney out of Murfreesboro.
Okay.
City paving, Don Lavorne and City Manager Hyde, we've got together, and with some of the recommendations, we're still evaluating the streets. We're getting requests through the website as well on certain avenues, wants and needs, and people coming by, has stopped by my office, and we're evaluating those lists.
I hope King Road pretty much on top of the list. Of what we do.
That would be a good suggestion, because I have a pretty good use for some of the milling, and I can bring that up about Evergreen Park as well. On Evergreen Park, we're probably, with the money we have left, we're probably 80% complete. I'm not sure if y'all have seen the new picnic tables, the grading that we've done out there. Randy and Justin have worked really hard to get the snake-infested grass cut out of there, and all the old trees and logs, and I've even seen Commissioner Bissell out there with his fishing rod. So it's looking really good. If we do King Road and we have to mill King Road, there's a potential of using the mill materials to help make with a parking lot there. I have a little bit of money left, maybe for some trash cans down there and some additional gravel. We've reutilized an existing swing gate that was down there for some reason. We put that back into a place where it's usable to cut off traffic to around the lake. All they can do is just park at the top of the lake. Working with the electric company to put some Cobra headlights out there so that when the police department patrols out there, they can see if there's anybody out there that needs to be run off after hours. Working with TWRA at Evergreen. We do have a partnership with them in the term of just on the fishing rodeo. They do that every year. They'd like to come out and shock the lake and make recommendations on how we can improve our lake quality at Lake Van and Evergreen Lake. So that should happen first or second week of June. And that is no charge to the city.
Do they check the other two lakes also?
Right now, it's just Lake Van and Evergreen. And I believe that's all I have on Evergreen. 5-year strategic plan for the park.
We are, as a staff, we're beginning to review that so we can make recommendations back to the park board.
Transportation plan, Mr. Lowell.
We're still working with Griggs and Maloney on the transportation plan. Probably within the next 2 or 3 months, we should have recommendations back to this board.
The farmer's market is the next item.
We understand there's been some changes in leadership, I guess you could say, or a little direction change, and we're not sure exactly how we want to proceed at this point. We don't have as much interest as has been stimulated in the past due to the death of Mr. Jones. So we're not sure exactly how to proceed, although we're having it placed on, the building placed on that piece of property.
Number 16, city center overlay.
From the last meeting, I think this commission pretty well decided that there wasn't need to revisit that if we were going to build the roads in town center, that it wouldn't be a need to revise that plan. Unless y'all,
No, I agree with what we talked about the revising, the word not to revisit. I think we are definitely going to keep it on a front burner and revisit it as need be, and as development comes our way. So I think it's going to be a revisited, not necessarily a revised, which we all agreed was not necessarily the best use of the money.
And the last item, city survey.
One thing I would like to do, like I've said before, I've prepared some questions and some general type of information to be given out or somehow assimilated to the public. I want to try to, right after we do budget, maybe come back and let's bring it to a commission meeting or even possibly a workshop and just make sure how we want to do it. If we want to do it this way, break it up. I developed 21 questions. I did some research and looked at other cities and how they were doing this and tried to, not create a new document, but tried to create a document that would fit Fairview. So we'll bring that back and have that for further discussion, probably shortly after we finish with the budget.
I sent to you and other commissioners the survey from the Williamson County Chamber. It was a Survey Monkey, but it also had the person that was, I don't know if the right word is collating or putting everything together. So I'd like you to look at that resource and say, can she help? Is it something of a fee or is it just a volunteer position? And I sent that because I wanted maybe to evaluate, can we maybe get help if we can't get past this stage?
And I've utilized those with MTS, quite a few of the surveys they put out in TML, and some of those are the similar type of surveys. So it's a very useful tool. So I will look further in that.
One thing I did forget to mention on Evergreen, item 12, the actual distance around that lake is about 200 feet shy of a half mile. So as that place develops as a park and maybe potentially paving, we can think about that. There'd be a good half-mile walking track. And we could get a little creative maybe with the paving and make it a full half mile, gain some 200 feet somewhere. So I just wanted y'all to, thank y'all.
Appreciate the report and the information, but most of all, appreciate your commitment to the projects. Thank you, and thanks staff for everything that y'all have done on the projects.
City manager, go back to this one. I'd like to see us have. Speak to put a notice out as far as interest in the farmer's market.
Okay.
I think I've had a lot of people tell me that they would love to have a farmer's market here, and I know what small thing they had before was visited on a regular basis. I've talked to Mrs. Jones, and she's dedicated to moving forward with it, working hard to get it done. So if we could put some kind of notice out
Okay.
to ask for people that are interested to contact us in some way or another, so we can keep it moving forward.
All right.
I will make a comment on that. The community garden did discuss the opportunities once the garden gets off, which
Right.
that would maybe create an interest of the vegetables or whatever may come out of the garden, that base could be part of the farmer's market if it does not get new wind. I did know that, I did see Saturday that Ms. Jones was there and I think one other person. Just not knowing the longevity and the commitment through the summer, I believe that we may see a new face, but I do believe there's a great interest, and I believe
for the
it'll pick up a new
citizens.
life, but it kind of got to let itself shake out and change as it
Correct.
is.
It wasn't so much that she was going to be part of it, just maybe the dedication of the long hours, the consistency that Mr. Jones was having down there. And there, absolutely, I've stopped there several times,
yeah.
and I'm a frequent visitor anytime I can get there. But yes,
I think
we
the
will look
opportunity
further.
to have one will be an asset to the city.
And being part of,
Absolutely.
being able to ask either through the survey piece or, like he said, just inquiring, I think more people involved, either with the community garden or with the farmer's market. We want everybody who has an interest to step up because everybody benefits from it.
That's something we might want to look at posting at the co-ops, feed store, Tractor Supply, places like that, where they may be getting stuff.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments on city projects? Moving on, 7E, discuss and or take action on the audits, RFPs. Ms. Pewitt?
Thank you, Mayor. We received 3 audit RFPs, one being Parsons and Associates. They were our previous auditor at $8,000. Patterson, Hardy, and Ballantine, PC, at $9,000. And Alexander Thomas Arnold, P. LLC, at $13,000. Looking for guidance from the board as to whether they would like to take the lowest proposal, or if they would like to interview all 3 and then make a choice from there.
I would like to see if Patterson, Hardy, and Valentine would negotiate
Okay.
their fees.
Can we ask
How long
just
has
one?
Parsons been our auditor?
I know that I have an audit that dates back to 2002, but I think that he has made mention before, roughly 20 years.
Okay. I think it, not interested in the high bidder, but I don't think, if I heard your numbers correctly, I don't think there's much difference between Parsons and the second bidder.
Correct.
And I-
$1,000 is the
I would
difference.
make a motion that we approve the second bidder. It's good to change auditors every once in a while. 20 years is probably too long. So I
We
would make
paid
a
him
motion that we do that.
$9,000 last audit. I'm sorry.
We have a motion on the floor.
I'll second it for discussion. I mean,
I'd like to amend his motion for her to negotiate with Patterson, Hardy, and Valentine that you had 3 bids and that they were 1,000 high. Would they negotiate?
Okay. Can I do that? I apologize.
Yeah, I
I'm not
guess I'll ask you. Can
Sure,
we do that?
that's,
I don't think you
Oh.
can.
I think once you've got the bids, you're either gonna have to, if you're gonna interview them, you're gonna have to interview all 3 of them. You're either gonna have to, take the bid as submitted, or you won't be able to negotiate a bid that's open in public. You either accept the bid or you reject it. Now, you don't have to take the low bid, but you've got to have a reason for not doing it. And if you want to interview all 3 of them, that's fine, but you'll have to interview all of them.
I withdraw my amendment.
well, I mean, I would like to know, like, is there, I mean, your opinion, is there anything that one's offering, are we getting a better value? I mean, they're auditing, so it should be hopefully all the same, but I would almost rather either interview them or, just.
I make a motion to take the low bidder.
And that's the one that we already have?
correct.
That's been doing it for a long time and not been charging us crazy.
I think that, if I may, can I, while the motion's not
Yeah,
seconded?
we're in discussion. Go ahead.
Okay. I know that the past 2 years, our current auditor has not been timely. However, the RFP that was issued said it has to be completed by December 31st, so he has to follow the RFP this year. Whomever we select has to start no later than August 31st and be completed by December 31st.
Did we not have that in place before? How was?
The laws, the comptroller requires it, but you can ask for an extension with the comptroller. But we put in our specifics that it has to be done, so I don't believe he can extend it this time. It would, he would be breaking his contract with us. And then we could in turn, I believe, do something about it.
If you make
no
the,
longer.
if you make the RFP a part of the contract by reference, then yes, if you require it, the state requires it by the 31st, you don't have to, if you've got it in the contract that it has to be completed and submitted by the 31st, yes, you certainly can, but you'd have to include that in your contract with them, that both the bid and the RFP is included in the contract by reference.
We have a motion and a second for accepting the bid of Patterson, Hardy, and Valentine.
Have we
I'm
closed
not-
out on his motion yet?
We have a motion and a
That was,
second.
okay.
Other discussion?
Yeah, I wasn't, I'm not, I kind of do believe with what Commissioner Basel was saying about, we've had the same one for 20 years, but then also, valid point, we've had somebody 20 years giving us a good value, I guess, and not raising the rates. Is there any particular, besides the fact that he wasn't getting it back in a timely manner, is there anything else that would be a concern
Not to
with
me.
this auditor?
No, I've worked well with him both years. The difference, you asked the difference, I have not particularly spoken with the other two. One of them I did, but the $9,000 bidder I did not. The difference would be the size. Parsons and Associates is 2 people, where Patterson, Hardy, and Ballantine are, I think it's 7 people I read, and then the Alexander Thomas is a much larger firm. That would just be the difference that I would know off the top of my head. But no, I've not had any issues with him. And he's told me that if we continue working with him, because he is elderly, his daughter is slowly taking over as the lead auditor on all of his cases.
Did he find any errors that we needed to correct during this last time?
The only thing that he put in his audit the last time was the gasoline pumps. That
And
was
the
the only
fleet.
thing his only finding.
What's your fleet maintenance?
That was,
Year before?
The gasoline pumps is the only thing that he put
Okay.
in the actual findings.
I think that was year before.
Okay.
So he is doing his job.
Well, no question. Other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
I vote aye.
I was going to ask you to repeat the motion, so anyway, I'm going to abstain.
Motion was
You can do
to,
that.
the motion was to accept the second bidder, make a change because 20 years, in my opinion, was, there's a level of complacency that happens not intentionally, it just happens. And it's just good to change auditors every once in a while. That was my reasoning. I didn't have anything in particular against it.
Okay, we have 3 yeas, 1 nay,
And abstain.
abstain. Motion carries for Patterson, Hardy, and Valentine to be the bid of choice.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Any other comments?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 8A, discuss and or take action on Cass Fagan property, map 18, parcel 47.27 in Evergreen Industrial Park.
Hi. Thank you for serving Fairview. I would like to retire in Fairview. I purchased 2 lots, parcels, and one is part of Evergreen Industrial Park. I've tried for several months to get all the signatures to evacuate that lot from the industrial park. And as you know, I've been able to get 23 out of 24. The paving company has not agreed to sign. And I tried today for one more time to talk to the paving company. I did get a hold of Mr. Derryberry to remind him that I was willing to put on my property a note that I would not complain about paving smells, but he interrupted me and said he's not interested in signing. He doesn't care what I do. He doesn't care what I and the Planning Commission do, but he's not paid by the government and he's not going to sign. So I feel a little bit at a bypass. And this was taken to the Planning Commission last meeting, and I was a little confused as to the outcome of the proposal of not requiring 100%, and whether that was understood that that is part of the, Planning Commission's purview, that they can do that. So I wanted Sharon Armstrong to talk about that.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. Ms. Fagan has appeared before the Planning Commission 4 times. Her attempts have been unsuccessful in gaining some relief for the ownership of this property and her desire to construct a residence on it. It does lie adjacent to residential property on both its boundaries on the right. The Planning Commission was of the opinion they did not have the right to vary the 100% requirement for signatures to have the plat or the property vacated from the plat. The subdivision regulations do allow for them to vary in extraordinary circumstances. Ms. Fagan is unable to construct on the rear of the property. It's cost prohibitive. There's a creek. There are environmental issues. There are issues with getting water line and electric to the back, the portion that lies in Wilson County. We are here tonight to ask if the City Commission would consider waiving or granting a variance to the covenants that exist on the property, which is Ms. Fagan's last resort. There is a residence located on the property in conjunction with a business. She does lie adjacent to residential properties. So requesting tonight that you grant a waiver from your covenants and restrictions for this property to allow her to construct a residence on the land that she owns. Failing that, we would welcome the chance to visit with your attorney and discuss the variance capabilities of your Planning Commission.
I'm going to ask for some direction from Dawn. Mr. Lavorne, we'll start with you. When she addresses the covenant restrictions, do we have authority over the covenant restrictions currently?
The covenant
The
restrictions.
city of Fairview, I mean.
The covenant restrictions can only be amended by 75% of the total lot owners, along with not a recommendation, but the approval of the industrial board and the approval of this board. So they'd have to get at least 75% of the property owners to sign that agreement. They'd have to get the industrial board to approve it as well, and this board to approve it as well.
So there's
But-
one avenue that we've not discussed, because I didn't know that we've discussed this part.
The resident that she's speaking of is a caretaker's. It's not really considered a single-family dwelling. It's just a caretaker's home for the kennel. Even if the covenants are amended to allow a residence, you couldn't allow the residence, a single-family residence, because of the zoning of the property.
Okay. And I want to visit the extraordinary circumstances.
Certainly.
Can you
Expound
explain
on
where
those.
that would be or where you have a
Absolutely.
valid point
Ms.
there?
Ms. Fagan also owns the parcel to the rear, which lies in Williamson County. She has explored with the utility companies for water and electric the potential of building on that parcel. There is a creek, and pardon me if I look at this plat, on that parcel, the west prong of Brush Creek. So there are environmental issues with getting a water line across the creek to that parcel. It's also extraordinarily cost prohibitive to have electric located on the property, to have a line run, because they have to get permission to cross the city boundaries and your right-of-ways and your easements in order to get that done as well. So it would be extraordinarily cost prohibitive for her for one issue, and then she may or may not receive permission from the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation to run the water line along that creek or across that creek to the parcel that's located in the rear. So her intentional desire was to simply be vacated. She's made every attempt with Mr. Derryberry that she can make. She does not have objection to his use. She simply needs that signature. She has acquired 23 out of 24, which would indicate that 75% of the property owners don't have an issue with her building a residence there. It would then require, and if I might, I'll read to you from your covenants, which Mr. Lavorne provided me a copy of. The city reserves the right at any time to approve in writing minor variances or waive in writing compliance with any of the covenants and conditions set forth in this instrument as may be deemed necessary. So you do have the authority to amend, vary, or waive requirements. At this point, When she purchased the property, it was expressed to her that she wouldn't have an issue building a residence. This is her retirement home, and she has used her savings for retirement to purchase this property.
Could
So
you
at this-
expound on that and tell this board who told your client that?
I believe that when Ms. Fagan was in the process of purchasing the property, she discussed with the agent who sold her the property that her desire was to build a house. The agent expressed to her it was simply a matter of a rezoning and gathering some signatures, something that would be really easy to do, so she purchased the property. She invested her savings in that property as a retirement home.
But at no time was that a city employee or representative of the city that told her
Absolutely
that?
not. She dealt, as most people do when they purchase property. I, like Mr. Lavorne, am a planner, and I get these situations all the time as well. Most people rely on the real estate agent to guide them through the purchase of property. When Ms. Fagan expressed that she was looking for a retirement place, she liked the property, liked the location, saw the houses next door, felt fairly comfortable moving on, and had no idea it would become so complex so quickly. I explored, at Ms. Fagan's request, the ability of the Planning Commission to vary that 100% requirement. It cannot violate your zoning ordinance, a variance, when it's granted, which it does not. It cannot destroy or compromise the intent, which it does not, of the subdivision regulations. So the Planning Commission expressed that they were of the opinion that they had no variance authority at all. There are some specific requirements established by state statutory requirements in the state of Tennessee under which variances can be granted. So at this point, she's kind of, to put it mildly, at her wit's end. It's been some 6 or 7 months. She is approaching retirement, and her only other option would be to place the property up for sale and begin the search all over again.
Mr. Lavorne?
The subdivision regulations do allow for variances. The Planning Commission was told that they had the ability, based on the subdivision regulations. They chose not to grant the variance. It wasn't that they didn't feel like they could, they just didn't want to. In the subdivision regulations, it gives out the reasons for granting variances. And in 1-12, 112 of the subdivision regulations, it lays out that the Planning Commission can grant variances for extraordinary hardships, but it also says that they cannot be self-imposed. Ms. Fagan bought the property knowing that it was zoned incorrectly, and then she comes in to ask for it to be rezoned residential. That's a self-imposed hardship. So the Planning Commission really couldn't grant the variance based on that.
So basically, what you're saying is, during the contract phase of the purchasing of the property, the due diligence wasn't done to see if what wanted to be done could in essence be done after closing.
Yes, sir.
All right, my next question would be, basically, would this be the same thing, Mayor, as just say lot 53 in Castleberry Farms all of a sudden decided they wanted to tear their house down and build a convenience store, and they wanted to go around and get signatures to be vacated from the plat so they could have a commercial building in the middle of the subdivision? Would that be approximately what we're asking for here?
Basically,
Yes.
that could very well happen.
I don't see how you could grant that.
It would also be illegal spot zoning. The Planning Commission could have granted a variance, but not when the condition that's complained of was self-imposed, and both the covenant restrictions are recorded at the courthouse. Anybody could have pulled them and looked at them.
Right.
There's nothing in those covenant restrictions that this board, if they chose to waive, there's nothing there to waive about a residence. The Planning Commission under 1-11, 1-111 on vacation of plats, that's where the provision comes in about the 100% of the signatures. They were given additional time to obtain those signatures, and, you know, try hard as they might, they apparently could not do that, and you can't make the man sign it. But even if the planning commission had granted a variance, this board, the planning commission can't rezone. This board would have had to rezone the property.
Absolutely.
And again, it would have been spot zoning. This board can't help the fact, nor can the planning commission, that apparently due diligence wasn't done on the front end, because this property is all zoned commercial and industrial. And it's not, there's not anything in this covenant restrictions that mentions anything about residence other than you can't have a permanent residence in there. So there's, even if you waive it, you've got a spot zoning situation, and that's illegal.
Does your client have in writing that the real estate agent told her that you could build this house?
No, I knew that I needed the signatures.
She explained to her that she would need the signatures and to seek rezoning, and I guess,
So the real estate agent, she did explain that to you then?
Yeah. I mean, given the fact that Mr. Derryberry said he didn't care what I did, is that not, you know, he just won't sign. He doesn't have an objection to it.
Well, he apparently does, because he won't sign it.
Still
He
doesn't
has
change the
an
fact.
objection to government,
Mayor,
not
with the
this
information
particular
that
thing.
with the information we've got from the city attorney and from the code department, I'd like to make the motion that we decline this request at this time.
Motion on the floor.
I can't talk to him anymore, there's a motion.
Second.
Discussion?
Based on the advice from our attorney, I don't see how it could be any different.
If I could,
Go ahead.
Mayor.
Discussion.
I'm a bit confused, so somebody's going to have to help me here. My understanding is that you knew that you were going to have to secure some signatures and change the zoning when you bought the property. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we don't really have, the real estate agent told you that or shared that with you, so we don't really have a deception by the real estate agent. So there's no deception really involved there. And as I understood what our city attorney told us, that even if we wanted to allow you to do that, that we are prohibited by law from spot zoning, which is, of course, just taking one piece of property in a group zone for something else and redoing it. And I think the illustration that though it was the reverse, I think what Vice Mayor Johnson said was a pretty good illustration about that would be inappropriate action.
So even though it's next to residential.
Well, yeah, the line is the line until the zoning changes. And as much as I empathize with your situation, I just don't see how we can allow it without the zoning being changed for that property. And that's another process. Now, some, I don't think they can be considered tonight because I don't think the proper channels have been. I think you'd have to go back to the planning commission and ask for a zoning change. Is that right, Don?
The plat has to be vacated before you can rezone the property because it's part of a industrial subdivision.
I asked for a zoning application.
But my understanding is in order for it to be vacated from the, but we can grant the variance for the 100% signatures.
No. That's part of the subdivision regulations. And if they're going to do that, they'd have to change the regulation. And that's the purview of the same way, that's the purview of the planning commission. They'd have to change it where you don't have to have 100% of the signatures to vacate the plat. And that's their call.
if I might, part of, I think, the issue for my client is that there is a philosophical disagreement with the ability of a planning commission to vary regulations. In preparing for the case, I consulted with George Dean, who is the land use attorney who advises the Tennessee legislature on matters of land use and planning, before we made that request. So it's a difference of opinion between attorneys, which I respect Mr. Cantrell's opinion. As a practicing planner, I dislike variances under almost every circumstance. Had Ms. Fagan not purchased a lot adjoining, all in one deed, and like most people who purchase property, due diligence was not done. Homeowners rely on the advice of other people. I became involved in her case long after the purchase was made. Cass and I know each other from a previous property that she looked at. Right now, she's sort of in a catch-22. She has no resolution to the circumstance that exists. But again, it's not our intent to circumvent any regulation. We understand rezoning would still have to be sought. Cass sought rezoning, filed the application with the Planning Commission. At the same time, she was acquiring signatures from 23 of the 24 adjoining property owners in Evergreen Park. All attempts for Mr. Derryberry.
I'd like to call a question, please.
I apologize.
We have a motion and a second. Would there be any other discussion from the board?
Mayor, may I say one other thing?
Yes, sir.
I'm not saying that the planning commission, I think you misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying the planning commission cannot grant that variance, because they can grant that variance, but they have already met on this once and said that they were not going to change from the 100% signatures. Now, they can go back and ask the planning commission to reconsider if they so desire, but this board can't grant that variance. That would have to be done by the planning commission.
And I want to revisit the motion. His motion was to,
Decline at this time to request.
but I don't see anything there for the word decline, so I
Yeah,
just want to
you
clarify.
can't grant the relief that they're asking for. They'll
But
have to go
there-
back
It
and.
says discuss and or take action on Cass Fagan property, Evergreen Industrial. There's nothing, I just want to make sure
Yeah.
his motion is
Vacation of the
correct, because he
plan.
said decline, and there's nothing
What
there
it
to.
should say is that you can't grant the relief that they're seeking.
Yeah,
They'll-
he's declining vacating the plat.
Right, they'll have to go back to the planning commission and ask,
Declining vacating the
Right.
plat, will that work?
yes, and they'll have to
wanted
go
to
back
make
to the
sure it was
planning
very
commission.
clear.
For their information, they'll have to go back to the planning
Second.
commission and file a petition with them, ask them to reconsider. And it needs to be in writing as to what you want them to reconsider, specifically what you want them to reconsider,
Okay.
so that you don't get off on some sidetrack. Because the planning commission don't have to grant it, I want you to know that. But they can consider it, and if they want to grant the variance, they can. And if they don't grant the variance, then that's their purview.
Thank you.
At what point can they say that they don't want it on their agenda?
Well, I think they've already considered it twice, and I think it goes back on this one. And that says, I've ruled on it, this is now 3 times. Then if it comes back again, they just say, we've already heard it. It's what's called res judicata. We've already decided this issue. We're not going to hear it anymore. And then their appeal is to the court system.
I call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Aye.
Thank you.
I abstain. We have 2 and 2.
No action. It dies.
Item number 8B, discuss and or take action on Bill 2013-10.
Mayor, I'd like you to see if they have representatives here before we move forward. Just ask if there's any. Is there
Anyone
here
here for
representing-
Jerry Carey or Russell Spicer? Were they duly notified?
Yes, we give them, when they file the petitions for annexation, we give them a list of dates for the meetings.
Move to defer, both items.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 8D, discuss and or take action, 4th of July celebration at City Hall. Commissioner Sutton.
This was a request made, of course,
Michael.
say move forward or decline. Move forward or decline with beer sales at the park at the 4th of July celebration we've had the last 2 years, and I didn't see any problems or anything with it. The request was just to find out if we're going to allow them out so they can move forward with their advertising.
Is that a motion?
I'd like to make that motion, yeah.
Second.
Discussion.
I agree with Commissioner Sutton. We've had no incidences last couple of years. I would like to make one correction. It's not at the park. It's at the City Hall.
City Hall, I'm sorry,
City
yes.
Hall complex up here. And I think people have conducted themselves. I think, first of all, Chief Harris and his group has handled the security very well. And then in addition to that, I think that the vendors have done what we've asked them to do. And I think we ought to allow it, and using the same rules and regulations that we did before, and just manage it the way it's been managed. And I don't think it'll have much of an effect one way or the other.
Discussion.
Mayor, if it passes, we need to also consider, do we limit it to the first vendor that shows up, or, because we are taking all food vendors and anybody that are asked to be a part of it. So we need to determine just one beer vendor if we go that far, or multiple.
Well, I would amend it that we have one vendor, that we don't need multiple vendors. One vendor seems to be able to handle it, and that be left up to staff to determine who that one vendor should be with, based upon the past relationships and the quality of the vendor.
Are we doing that with all?
We have a motion on the floor, sorry. We have an amended motion.
My amendment.
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion.
Do we have limits on any of the other vendors?
Not that I'm aware
One
of.
barbecue, one chicken, one
Nope.
turkey leg, one?
No, sir.
Okay, so
And
have we got any applications for that yet? Or
No,
are we
not at
got
all.
one?
for food, snowball.
Okay, I'm
machines,
just,
something like that.
have we advertised for vendors yet?
Mhm.
Okay, so, that's, if we're gonna have one, then the first one comes in, qualifies, gets it, then that
And
would be
do
my
they have to
opinion.
come before the beer board to get a permit? And would it qualify for if any had sold during the sting operations and things like that? Is this something the beer board could determine instead of staff?
Yeah, the beer board would have to the beer board would have to act on the permit if it's a temporary or an event
It
permit.
would be a
whichever.
temporary, we've done that last 2 years, so, okay. I don't have anything else.
Any other discussion on the amendment? All those in favor?
Aye.
I vote nay.
I
First am-
abstain.
Abstain. First motion. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I vote nay.
Abstain.
Motion carries. Number 9 is city manager comments.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Just want to let you know, we are going forward with Independence Day celebration entertainment, and we anticipate just local entertainment, and we'll be approaching those individuals in the next couple of weeks to get that secured. Have had some inquiries, and probably look at 3 or 4 entertainment groups. One thing that I want to, my second item for discussion, we all feel very strongly about our veterans, and I'm going to put on the next agenda, the first one in June, that we rename, or that we name the park at Evergreen Lake Veterans Park, and that we go with possibly some donations or something to be able to get monument, flagpoles, that type of thing put up out there. So that'll be forthcoming on the first meeting in June. The other thing is a town hall meeting, and I'm sure the mayor will mention something about that later. That's all I have. Thank you.
Staff comments?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a presentation of the April financials. for revenues for the month of April are at 74%. Our target number would be 83.33%. I would like to say, I discussed last time that we have not seen the revenue from Walmart, or we don't believe we have. It comes as a bulk number, so it doesn't detail it based on each business for us. However, what did I say? I apologize. MAPCO. I'm still stuck on Walmart. MAPCO, I'm sorry. But I did receive, we don't receive the money till the 20th, but the notice that I received shows the county sales tax revenues increasing $13,000 for the month of, well, it's really the month of April, but we get it in May. That would be assumed to be MAPCO. However, it could be Publix increased, it could be any number of things that increased, but it did increase the number by 13,000. So we should see that coming in on the 20th of this month.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
When we were doing budget projections last year, did we include that in our budget projections
Yes, sir.
for MAPCO?
Oh, I don't know if MAPCO specifically, but we increased the sales tax revenue. I believe it was 20%. But I don't know that we specifically said MAPCO.
Okay, but we did increase it by 20%.
Yes, we did.
Thank you.
For expenses, sorry, got sidetracked. Our overall number for expenses is 83.54%. Again, our target's 83.33%. So we're just slightly ahead of plan, or over budget, apologize. We are up 12.3% from 2012. We are watching our numbers very closely. Probably will not have any spending the month of June unless it's absolutely necessary, so we can have all of our numbers finalized by the end of June, all of our invoices in and paid. But we are just slightly ahead of plan at 83.54%. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. May I ask one more thing? We discussed changing the budget, but we didn't discuss another budget workshop. I don't know if we want to do that or not. It just came to my mind, so I wanted to make sure I pointed it out.
And how about we look at that real quick? We have a town hall meeting on the 30th. And I will speak about that, but we'll be focusing on opening up for public input or discussion. If there be none or it be short, then we can go into a workshop at that point.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anybody have a negative to that?
Didn't we agree that that would be the first reading for the budget? So we need to have the workshop prior to that in order to have the first reading. Otherwise, we will be delinquent.
Memorial weekend is next week.
Well, if
So that would be,
I would think we would do it at 6 o'clock before the 7 o'clock.
He's just saying do it the same day, but do it before the vote.
Before the meeting, because the meeting is supposed to be to have the first reading of the budget
That same night.
that same night. Otherwise, we
I don't
won't
think we'll
meet
be
the
ready
July
for the
1st
first reading.
deadline.
Depends on how quick
It
they get
has
this
to be-
back to us.
15 days apart, so we could do a later second meeting in July or June if necessary. It should be passed by the 30th to meet comptroller's guidelines,
Right.
but they have to be 15 days apart.
To be safe, wouldn't you feel better to come in and have another meeting maybe next week?
then we'd be looking at Monday, the 20th, or Wednesday, the 22nd. That's my suggestion. I'm open.
Can you get it to them
The 20th, that's just Monday.
Monday.
20 seconds?
Can we get it advertised and everything in time?
Can we
Next Thursday night,
pass,
anybody?
can we do 22nd or
Wednesday, the 22nd.
Wednesday?
Wednesday
Just to
the
give me more
22nd?
than one day,
What,
just in case.
well, I mean, we could even do it, you could even do it the 28th, that Tuesday.
good. Y'all just said it.
After Memorial Day, and then it would give you the time to
As long as I get more than one day.
I may not
That's
be
all
back
I'm
Tuesday.
asking for.
I won't,
Oh,
I
okay.
won't be here on Tuesday.
Okay.
Let's
Why
try the
wouldn't
22nd.
Why wouldn't we do it at 6 o'clock before the 7 o'clock town hall?
I agree.
I mean, what's it gonna require?
Because if we're not finished, we can't do what you want to accomplish, so.
Well, that means it doesn't pass first reading.
Okay.
Well, we are finished. I mean, from all practical purposes, tonight, in a 3-2 vote, you told her to balance the budget. When they give you back the balanced budget, what is there to look at? There's no additional funding to do. We're not going to use any of the projections from Walmart based upon the vote tonight, so there's nothing.
Y'all want to wait to the 30th? I'm
There's
fine with
nothing
that.
for her to do, other than make the changes to the numbers and him to make the cuts.
Do you have a preference of the 22nd, having it done and being able to discuss more, or waiting and,
I don't,
any other comments?
I'm good with whatever you tell me.
Okay.
If it's not in order, it doesn't have to pass.
Well, you're taking that risk by doing what you're doing, whereas if everybody can be the 22nd, then we have time to know that we've got it. I don't feel comfortable taking the 1 hour risk of everything will be done versus we could meet before and have plenty of time.
Well, here's the answer. You either have a special meeting before, or you have a special meeting next month. Either way, you're having a special
I mean,
meeting.
I can be here
Not
on
if
the
we meet on the
22nd. I'm just
22nd and we do a
saying
final,
why.
we do a first reading on the 30th.
Just a special-
You're either
why don't-
having a special meeting on the 22nd, or you're having a special meeting in July, is what I
Having a
was saying.
workshop on the 22nd.
Why don't we just move the time, if you're worried about time frame, come in at 5:30 versus 6, or, you know, at least give it a little more, because when we start discussing things, we all know it takes, we could have stayed for another hour
Right.
tonight.
If y'all are okay to waiting to the 30th and starting it at 5:30, we'll settle on that.
That'd be fine. That'd give them
Any
more time
negative?
to prepare.
I'm fine, because we can always have a special meeting later, so.
Okay, 5:30 on the 30th, budget workshop. Any other questions, Ms. Pute?
That's it. Thank you very much.
Other staff comments?
Just real quick this evening, I'd like to make sure that everybody's aware that the street department will be out in full force doing right-of-way mowing, so be cognizant of our bush hogging, boom hogging. You know, just if you see our signs up and you see our guys in our, you know, safety green uniforms, just be careful around them and anybody else on the roadway for that matter. And then also, if you do, we've had some really nice weekends. Make sure if you put brush out, put the cut in towards the roadway. And that's all I have.
Next.
Good evening. I'm just getting back to you guys. You asked me to chat with Neil Desvani from Metro Parks about the 6 Mile Run. And everything I've asked him was good to go. As far as any injuries, there was no injuries reported. We were kind of concerned about that. They do not receive any percent from their profits. If you charge for an event in Metro Parks, they double your fee. Just to throw that out there. So if it was $125 that we charged, or if they charge $125, they would just double it to $250. So our percent is definitely a good thing.
Okay.
Max amount of runners was 250. They left the park in great working order. They cleaned up after themselves, and they said they would work with them and are working with them for more races. And on the other hand...
What's the date, please, Keith?
What's that?
The date that we approved?
For the run?
Yes, sir.
July 14th,
Thank you.
from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. It's a Sunday morning. We have the fishing rodeo going on June 8th from 7 to 10 a.m. Partner again with TWRA, and we have fishing poles, tackle boxes, all kinds of good stuff to give away.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Okay. City Attorney comments?
The only thing I have, Mayor, is I've been advised by the city manager that it's been advertised, we'll remind everybody about the executive session after we dismiss. As soon as we can get together, I promise to be short. Thank you.
Communications from the commissioners. Commissioner Bazell?
Nothing, Mayor.
Commissioner Carroll?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Commissioner Sutton?
Nothing.
Commissioner Johnson?
Well, just something to think about, I guess. It's puzzling to me, and the mayor's side after the vote was taken, and I don't see how we can have an issue and the city attorney tell us that we absolutely cannot do it by law, and then two commissioners go against his decision. I mean, everybody's got the right to vote how they want to, but I just can't imagine going against legal advice. I don't understand that, and I'm quite certain that I'm going to hear about it tomorrow morning in my visit to McDonald's, because there are tons of people that sit at home and watch these meetings. People, I guess they think people don't care, but people care. And another thing would be the $1,000 that was wasted tonight of taxpayers' money to change auditors. We haven't had a problem with our auditor. If it's ever been a question that anybody on this board has known about him getting it in late, tell me now.
It was late for David 2 years, and it's been late for her 2 years.
But why was nothing ever mentioned that we needed to change then? That's my question.
Filed an extension, and she expressed it each time. To answer your question, sir.
I agree with you. That's what I wanted to hear. I mean, it's just,
Well,
if that was that big a deal,
I'd like to
we
answer
should.
your two questions, since you're apparently addressing them toward Commissioner Carroll and myself. First of all, legal advice is legal advice. And while I respect Mr. Cantrell, I don't always agree with Mr. Cantrell. And so the fact that Mr. Cantrell has told me that in his opinion X is X or Y is Y, I still have to apply my own judgment, because I'm the one that's held accountable, not Mr. Cantrell. So I'll vote as I see vote, and I think there's been a lot of problems in the whole process as it pertains to that lady's application. Everything from the start to the end. And I think one of the things that we testify to up here is that we're trying to serve the public, and I think instead of trying to help her solve her problem, we're trying to make her problem more difficult. And I didn't hear an answer that we had done everything we could do to help her, so I chose to vote nay. Now, while we're on that subject about what I do or don't vote for, I'd like to talk about abstaining. Robert's Rules of Order says that when you abstain, you must state the reason that you abstain, and it must be a conflict of interest. If you choose to no vote, you can do that. But tonight, several of the board chose to abstain without giving a reason, and should have been called to order, but I didn't, because I felt like they're commissioners and they can stand good for what they say. Now, as to spending the $1,000, basic accounting principles will tell you that it is a good practice to rotate accountants, because you don't know whether or not he's done a good job because you haven't checked his work, and most of us, save probably the CFO and myself, don't have enough accounting background and didn't do an audit of the auditors. We just took the information for face value. So I'm sorry if you disagree that it was worth $1,000. You expressed that in your vote. Or maybe you didn't, I don't remember, maybe you abstained. But the bottom line was that, that carried by majority.
I agree.
And so we don't see it as a waste. And if we're going to reach the point that we're going to start criticizing each other for where we vote based upon certain things, it's going to get nasty up here, and that's not how we want to operate. That's not how we have tried to operate, at least for the last 5 years, you and I and Commissioner Sutton, and for the last 2 years with the 3 years with the mayor and the other commissioner, Commissioner Carroll. So you know, you're free to express your opinion, but in the past, our opinions have been about our stances, not taking shots at the other commissioners about how they voted. And so I turn it back over to you. Thank you for allowing me to express my opinion.
I have no problem with you speaking, and you can speak again in just a minute if you'd like to. To me, Larry said it was cut and dry. It would be illegal for us to do it. I don't see how you go against that. If you want to, that's perfectly fine.
Well, I didn't vote against what Larry said. What I voted against, as I explained, was the fact that I saw nobody in any form of our city government, either the planning commission, the staff that's responsible, I saw nobody trying to help the lady solve her problem. Now, if we can't solve her problem after we've done our due diligence to try to help her to do that, then we can't solve her problem. I don't think it was particularly smart on her part to buy property based on the fact she might get some signatures and might do this. But I do think that you know, she's a citizen and she's asking us for help, and you know, we're bending over backwards in other areas to do things. Why wouldn't we see every possibility? Under the current circumstances, I think that our city attorney told us exactly right. But the no vote was more of I guess I empathize with her, you know, and that we really weren't trying to help her solve her problem. We were just simply saying no. And that's particularly frustrating. That's not something that's been our nature, any of us.
I agree.
You know, and you especially, I've seen you do things like the place on the light. You know, the placement of the light of the lady. You went well over to try to help her solve her problem because the initial answer was no. So that's why.
Well, that's completely understandable, but to me, she caused it. You didn't tell her to go buy that property.
No.
But if we did change it and allow it, are we going to go with the other scenario we spoke of during the meeting and let somebody in the middle of the subdivision do it as well?
No. But I think that's the whole purpose of variances and everything, is that you judge things on their merit and make your decisions. We have granted variances. The Planning Commission has granted variances. Maybe granting the variance is not the right thing. I don't know that. What I was just trying to impart was I didn't think we were trying to explore all avenues. I think we were using no as the pat upfront answer. And that was a problem for me. If we explore everything and we can't do it and the answer is still no, that's fine. But, you know, I feel sorry for the lady, but I can't help her. But that's where I was with it.
Add a little bit to that. It has been enforced 2 times before, and it has been explained after legal advice, the ordinances and everything else that we could not do that. She was explained that 2 times before. Am I correct now? Well, I'm sorry. Was it 3.5? Was it 4 times?
If I might say
It's
something.
been based on the advice and based on the ordinances and everything. That's the reason it was denied. It wasn't, we just don't want you.
If I might say something, the time that it came up, the request was to vacate the plat, and she was informed at that time that you had to have 100% of the signatures. And at that particular meeting, the variance wasn't discussed. It was, do you need some more time to get those signatures? Then she goes away and several weeks pass and comes back and then wants the variance. And the Planning Commission, it was explained at that time, she said what she wanted was a variance, and the Planning Commission decided that they were not going to grant the variance because that was in their subdivision regulations, and they didn't want to vary them. Now I think it's coming back again, and I think that at that point in time, every effort will be made to make absolutely sure. I'm not going to advocate for them, I can't, but when they get finished, that the Planning Commission understands what their options are. and then it's their vote.
Thank you. I'd like to make comments. First of all, remind everyone that we have Clean Sweep on Saturday, and we are showing our pride in cleaning up and keeping Fairview beautiful. It'll be at 8 a.m. at the Bank of America, and that is co-sponsored by the Fairview Chamber of Commerce and Keep Williamson Beautiful, so come out and show your support. Second announcement, I'd like to comment on the 31st of May is the 5th Thursday, which is our town hall meeting. And I'd like to kind of direct that to the public, I'm sorry? 30th, 30th of May. And I'd like to direct that to the public for the option of the public speaking about the budget, towards the budget, comments, just to put it out and be transparent towards our 2013-2014 proposed draft budget. Any other comments? Need a motion for adjournment? All those in favor? I request immediate executive session.